Hi guys, welcome. Who dat? I'm Joe, and I'm here to break down preseason week 2 matchup between our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints, as we traveled to California to practice twice against the Los Angeles Chargers and eventually in SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, where the Saints defeat the Los Angeles Chargers 22-17. It was an interesting game. I found in the joint practices, the starters participated for the majority of the reps. And so for the preseason game, it was the backups and their chance to shine, to prove that they can make this team. Final score 22-17. Jameis Winston starts the game for the Saints. Jake Haener does the second half. And little ups and downs here. So overall, I found that certain players stood out for the Saints. Certain players showed that they may be relegated to the practice squad, if that at all. And of course, the worst part was the penalties again. Let's take a look at these stats. Jameis Winston starts the game. He looks okay for the most part. He tried to force a few things later on in the first half. But overall, I felt like the backup offensive lineman for the Saints did an okay job. Last week they struggled. They struggled a bunch this week as well, mostly with the penalties. What was happening is the offensive linemen were getting beat at the line of scrimmage, and then they were holding their guy, to prevent the defender from killing the quarterback. So basically, that's where a lot of the penalties came, holding. We also had a bunch of pass interference, offense and defense. Oh, geez. Jameis Winston, 13 of 21 for 169 yards. I think overall he was okay. I got frustrated with him again. It felt like he was holding the ball too long, and he was looking for that big play. He did amass a bunch of yards. He did complete a few deep balls, but overall, Jameis, once again, he holds on to the ball too long. There were several plays from my vantage point where there were guys wide open and he was trying to take the shot down the field. That's just the way Jameis is. He's a mixed bag. So a lot of controversy there, but to me, it's just the same. I was excited for the second half to see Jake Haener. He comes out, looks okay. People are giving him props this week. It wasn't much different than last week. Last week he finished 10 of 17. This week he finishes 11 of 17 for 118 yards. Saints made their way into the red zone a few times. We kept having to come away with field goals, and that was one of the positives in this game. Our special teams unit did pretty good. Field goal kicking, perfect. Will Lutz finished 3 for 3, and Blake Grupe finished 2 out of 2. So good stuff. If you're not going to punch it in the end zone due to penalties a lot of the time, it's good to come away with the kicks. At running back, we had Kendre Miller lead the team with 10 carries for a total of 23 yards and a touchdown. Kendre Miller also caught 3 balls for 36 yards. Kendre was shining. He only averaged that 2.3 yards a carry. And a lot of that, I feel, has to do with the offensive line not blocking very well. But we saw a lot of good effort from Miller. Darrell Williams finishes with 8 carries for 17 yards. Ellis Merriweather finished with 5 carries for 15 yards. John Trey Kirkland had a carry for 8 yards. As far as receiving goes, Merriweather ended up with the most catches. He had 4 catches on 4 targets for 26 yards. And wide receiver Shaq Davis, offensive player of the game, perhaps. 3 catches on 5 targets for 63 yards. John Trey Kirkland on 3 targets had 3 catches for 59 yards. Kendre Miller with the aforementioned 3 catches on 3 targets. Tight end Lucas Kroll. He ends up with 3 catches for 30 yards, but he was targeted 8 times, and he had at least 2 drops, including a touchdown, which was a beautiful pass from Hayner. And okay. Wide receiver A.T. Perry, 3 catches for 22 yards. He was targeted 5 times. Wide receiver Lynn Bowden Jr. on 3 targets had 2 catches for 37 yards. Kirk Merritt had a catch for 8 yards. Darrell Williams had a catch for 4 yards. Adam Prentice had 1 catch for 2 yards. And wide receiver Brian Edwards, 4 targets, 0 catches. Edwards was flagged twice for offensive pass interference, once negating a touchdown. Sore spot there. I'll talk about who really let us down, here at the end of these stats. We're going to talk about the defense first. Leading the charge is edge rusher Nico Lalos. He's slotted as a defensive end. Lalos out of Dartmouth. This is his 2nd year. He was undrafted last year. He spent the practice squad with us. He was on our practice squad. He's a defensive end, and we're trying to see if he can be a stand-up linebacker. I think this is the same route we went with Zach Bond. Lalo spent all of his time at defensive end last year in preseason. He was standing up a bit in this game, and he had a great game. He led the team with 5 tackles, including 4 tackles for losses, including 3 sacks. He also had a pass defense. Nico Lalos, of course, is our defensive player of the game. Malcolm Roach finished with 4 tackles. Cornerback Adrian Fry had 4 tackles. He played the majority of the game, as did safety Jonathan Abram, who had 4 tackles. Safety Ugo Amadi shows up again with 4 more tackles. Linebacker Ryan Connolly, 3 tackles. He also had a sack. Another good outing for Connolly. Defensive back Lonnie Johnson Jr., who was flagged a couple of times, which put a damper on his overall day. He also finishes with 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception to seal the game. Safety Smoke Monday, who played a majority of the game, had 3 tackles and a pass defense. And newly acquired Jalen Smith, linebacker, got to play a bunch in the first half, and he looked really good in the first couple of defensive series. He finishes with 3 tackles and a pass defense. He stuffed the Chargers on 3rd down twice. Nice game by Jalen Smith. Defensive end Peyton Turner. He only played the first couple of series, but he finishes with a tackle. He had a sack, and it was a forced fumble on the sack, which was recovered by defensive tackle Brian Bresee. Brian Bresee has a fumble recovery, and he also had a pass defense at the line of scrimmage in this game. Bresee puts up stats for the first time for the black and gold, and it's good to see our defensive tackle, 1st-round draft pick, making big plays with a pass defense and fumble recovery. Good job, Bresee. We also had a pass defensed by linebacker Zach Bond and by defensive tackle Tano Passanio. And Isaac Yiadom had a pass defense. He also had an interception. Yiadom was in good position for half the time he was out there. He had another interception, potential interception, that went right through his hands. But Isaac Yiadom's a good special teamer, and I think he's going to make this team. So overall, as far as offense and defense goes, I'm going to say defensive players of the game. Of course, Nico Lelos with the 3 sacks. Everyone says with that performance, he should be on the team for sure. He's not going to make the team. I'm sorry. If he does, it's going to be because we put our second-round draft pick Isaiah Foskey on the practice squad. I don't think that's going to happen. Unless we want to count Lelos as a defensive end / linebacker, maybe edge rusher, and we find a spot in that linebacker room for him. I just don't see Nico making the final squad. He had a great game. Congratulations. But, yeah, we're too crowded at defensive end for Lelos. I'm also going to highlight Jalen Smith as the defensive player of the game. His first action as a Saint, and I think he proved right out of the gate he belongs on the team. Last year, we had signed John Bostic late, and his veteran presence showed up in preseason. We ended up cutting him. I think Jalen Smith's a different kind of monster here, though. I think he can play all 3 linebacker spots. I think Jalen Smith made a name for himself to be on the squad. With this performance in this first game, hopefully we'll see him in the last preseason game. I'm also going to mention defensive players of the game. Defensive end, Peyton Turner. Defensive tackle, Brian Bresee. We're waiting for them to show something, and they did in this game. I'm also going to highlight Ryan Connolly because this is the second game in a row where he's stood up. He's shown out. So good job right there for our defensive boys. These are our players of the game. And our offensive players of the game, Kendre Miller. That incredible catch down the sideline on a wheel route. Beautiful pass by Winston. It gets us to within 7 yards of the end zone. And then on the next play, Kendre breaks it with a run through the middle. 7-yard touchdown. Kendre Miller could have missed the rest of the preseason with that sprained knee, but instead he bounces back. He practices all week and shows out in the game. Now, like I say, he didn't average a lot per carry, but he proved that he can catch the ball. That fantastic catch down the sideline, and he was targeted 3 times through the air, and he caught all 3. Kendre Miller has the hands. I'm also going to highlight Shaq Davis at wide receiver. Winston was trying to push the ball to him, but overall Shaq did a good job. And Jontre Kirkland, he only averaged about 4 or 5 yards on his returns, but he did have 3 catches and a nice little 8-yard run. Good job by Kirkland. Don't think he's going to make the squad, but he will definitely be on our practice squad. Kirkland gives me that, Harris Hardy, kind of Rashid Shaheed kind of feel, special teamer. Can he make the leap to wide receiver? Good stuff overall. Kendre Miller, Shaq Davis, Jontre Kirkland. All right, let's talk about those damn penalties. 14 penalties for 141 yards. Anytime you get 100 yards in penalties, you might as well take 7 points off, potential. We almost gave up a football field and a half on penalties. That's not going to cut it. There was a game when Sean Payton was our coach in preseason where we had 22 penalties. So, these things happen in preseason. Yeah, 14's ridiculous, all right? 22's insane, but this week we had 14. The Chargers end up with 5 penalties for 26 yards. Maybe the referees were getting in preseason form, getting some work on their motion. Or maybe it's just the Saints being undisciplined. We're very active, we're very physical. But I think the eyesore here for the penalties was the pass interference, offensive pass interference by Brian Edwards, of course, and those holding penalties by the offensive line, which they were getting beat, so they were grabbing their guy, and that was what was happening. Technique, everything's okay. If you get beat, you get a penalty or you let your quarterback get sacked. I don't know if the quarterback getting sacked would have lost more yards than the 10-yard penalty. We would have definitely lost the down. So, we got to get that cleaned up. Not not only eliminating penalties, but also not getting beat at the line of scrimmage by our backups. Trevor Penning did play a couple of series. He got beat a couple of times. He's a guy working through the motions. I'm not so down on that. I'd like for him to improve. I would hope that he would get a little bit more playing time because, he was going against backups here. And he got beat on a run play and he got beat on a pass. So, yeah, Penning needs more work. I mentioned Lutz and Groupie being great. Gillikin had 2 punts for 90 yards. One of them was down inside the 20. Good job by Gillikin this week. He only got the 2 punts. Lou Headley had 5 punts for 221 yards. He had 2 of them down inside the 20. So overall, once again, the punting was okay. Gillikin didn't shank one this time. I'll give the edge to Gillikin this time. That one's coming down to the wire. I think Gillikin's going to be our punter, but we were in the red zone 5 times and we only scored 1 touchdown out of it. That's not good, but like I say, the running game was not effective, and the penalties just killed us. Defensively, we allowed the Chargers to get in the red zone 3 times, and they came away with 2 touchdowns. The bulk of the scoring for the Chargers came with their quarterback running around. He scored 2 touchdowns, including one was like a quarterback sneak, but one was a pass play where Foskey lost containment on the outside, and he got chewed out by our head coach because of it when the quarterback decided to scramble. Foskey was out of position a few times. He didn't record a stat again, and yeah, he famously got chewed out because it was right there for the world to see on TV. Dennis Allen showing some emotion for a change and chewing out Foskey. Yeah, this is Dennis Allen's team now, and I appreciate him getting animated here. I would appreciate it even more if the team were more disciplined as a result of DA's coaching. So we'll see. Running back coach Ron Curry, who spends a lot of times with quarterbacks as well, he had a chance to call the offensive plays in this game. It's something the Saints like to do. We give other coaches a chance to see what they can do. Ronald Curry's a good coach. I think he called a good game. We finished scoring 22 points. When you have 14 penalties, there's a chance you should lose that game. But our defense looked great overall, and we forced 3 turnovers. We get 5 sacks total, and that was the difference in the game. So we end up +3 in the turnovers for the game. We're now at +5 for the preseason. And that's where you get your win. That's how you overcome 14 penalties, by forcing turnovers. We couldn't convert on 3rd down offensively, but we were stopping the Chargers from converting 3rd downs. So overall, mixed bag. I didn't think the game was boring. So there you go. Who dat? I'm going to pull up the the roster for the Saints as it stands right now, going into the last preseason game. Here's the offense. After all the shuffling we've done, this is the way the guys look. These are the offensive players we're going to choose from to make the final 53-man roster. Later on this week, possibly before the preseason game, I'm going to give a prediction of who I think will make the team. These are your offensive players to choose from. That depth on the offensive line concerns me, but I think we are thinning the herd a little bit when it comes to wide receiver. A.T. Perry has shown that he should probably make this team. Brian Edwards proved this weekend that he should not make this team. Traquan Smith hasn't played in preseason yet. He has a big he was having a big mini camp and OTA, and he had seemed to solidify his spot on this team. But since he hasn't been around for preseason and training camp due to injury, I'm just not sure where this is going to go. I believe Traquan Smith and A.T. Perry are the front runners here. I think Brian Edwards is out of the mix now. You've also got wide receiver Keith Kirkwood and Shaq Davis, who are making a name for themselves now. And that's the competition at wide receiver. At tight end, I believe Lucas Kroll is another practice squad guy. He had the opportunity here with 8 targets in this past game to show off, to show out. And he only makes 3 catches. The first catch he made was incredible, and then after that, he just couldn't hold on. He finishes with 3 catches, but on 8 targets, including a couple of drops, just not good enough. Jimmy Graham, with his supposed seizure, he did not play in the game, and I'm not sure how this tight end room is gonna shake down. We haven't seen Jesse James all year, and Ian Holtz has been getting a lot of playing time. You know we're going to keep Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, and Taysom Hill. The question is whether we're going to keep a 4th tight end or not. We were leaning towards Jimmy Graham. Personally, now I'm leaning towards Ian Holtz because he's a bona fide run blocker, and we have pass catchers already. Let's see what happens with Jimmy Graham in this preseason game coming up. We got a lot of work for our backup offensive lineman. On a high note, Nick Saldiveri played the majority of the game, and he did not get penalized. That's great. Kudos to anyone on the offensive line who didn't get penalized this game. Philstrom as a backup center, he didn't get penalized either. So, all right, guys, that's your offense. Here is the defense. And these are your players that you're going to choose from. Who's going to make the 53-man roster? Like I say, Nico Lelos is way down there. He and Kyle Phillips has been getting most of the preseason snaps at defensive end. Isaiah Foskey on the other side hasn't recorded a stat yet. So do you keep Lelos as your 5th defensive end, or do you keep Foskey? I think that's a choice the Saints are going to have to make. They know better than me. Foskey has a lot of ability, and I guess much like Peyton Turner, if he's given a couple of years, maybe he'll come into something good, and maybe we don't want to take a chance putting Foskey on that practice squad. Defensive tackle Jack Heflin looked pretty good in this past game. Colin Saunders has continued to look like a great addition. I believe that is one of the key free agent signings we made. We're going to be better against the run because of it. He is a big man, and he can move. And it seems like whether we have Garcia next to him or Nathan Shepard or even Malcolm Roach, as long as Saunders is out there, it's looking pretty good. At linebacker, Jalen Smith probably made a case to stay on this team, along with Pete Werner and Demario Davis and Zach Bond. I think Nephi Sewell has looked great. Ryan Connolly, Ty Summers have all looked fine. Anthony Orji has played a lot in this preseason. And, those are some choices that are going to have to be made here at linebacker. And at cornerback and safety, I think we're going to keep 10 total, and how you want to split that up is up to you. Personally, I'm leaning toward Ugo Amadi and Isaac Yiadom to make this team. Of course, Bradley Roby. Lattimore missed the game. He was injured in the joint practices, but it was supposed to be minor. Paulson Adebo, Alante Taylor both played this weekend. Ugo Amadi's got that experience as a nickelback as well as corner and safety, and he's got an interception this preseason. I also like Yadam as a special teamer, and he got an interception this past game. So I like those guys. Jonathan Abram hasn't shown me much. Smoke Monday is not going to be able to overtake someone like JT Gray, who's definitely going to make this team. Jordan Howden's got a lot of playing time. He's been put in a lot of different spots. I think Howden makes this team. So, that's your defense, guys. Like I say, I'll put out a video predicting who I think is going to make the 53-man roster. So subscribe to Rosenville 10 for more Saints videos and to see that video as well. And for my post game of our upcoming preseason match against the Houston Texans. Until then, I'm Joe. Talk to you later, guys. Who dat?